All right, guys, I am just super pumped for this word today. Who was here last week? Anyone? Yeah? Who wasn't here last week? Right? Right? No, it's okay. I want to encourage you to go and watch last week's message. You got to go back and watch it. It was powerful, and we talked about the power that lives within us last week. Did you know that there's a power that dwells within you? There's a power that dwells within you if you're a Christ follower. The word power, it occurs 57 times in the New Testament, and it's used to describe the most powerful events that ever happened. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Powerful. Powerful. That resurrection power is available for you today. It's available for you. Paul, he said, I want to know Christ and the power, someone say power, and the power of his resurrection. Again, in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 19, he says, I pray that you will begin to understand how incredibly great his power is to help those who believe in him. It is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead. The Greek word for power, it's dunamis. Dunamis. And it can be translated in two different ways. The first is dynamite. Dynamite. That means an explosive force. Dynamite, explosive force. And the second is dynamo. It means a constant flow of power. And if you got Jesus, you have both. That's powerful. Poke your neighbor and say, that's powerful. But listen, we learned last week that yes, as Christ followers, there is a power that lives within us, but it is up to us to activate the power, right? We have got to activate the power. Remember, we can pray all we want. God, use me. God, help me do this. Use me, Lord. But it's up to us. God's not going to make you do anything. Did you know that? Right? God, use me. That's not how it works. We have to activate the power. Activate the power. How many of you activated the power this past week? Did you activate the power? If you didn't, why didn't you? Why not? Why didn't you? Too tired? I'm too tired. I forgot to. I'm too busy. I didn't feel like it. Can I tell you, we make terrible excuses. We make terrible excuses. Oh, it's bad, people. The average American makes up to 6 excuses daily. Ew. Did you hear that? 6 excuses daily? That's terrible. This is crazy. According to the Business Insider, last year, 2022, there were 2,230,240 Google searches in the United States alone for excuses to miss work. That's crazy. That's bad. Someone say excuses. And we do it all the time. We make excuses all the time, don't we? And then when we can't come up with a good excuse, right, we Google it. We Google it. Come on, who's guilty? Who's Googled a good excuse? Oh my goodness. We laugh about it, but man, it's no good, right? Jesus, the greatest preacher of all time, he had some things to say about excuses. We're going to take a look at Luke chapter 14. starting in verse 16. Let's look at this story together. It says that Jesus, he replied with this story. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, "Come, the banquet is ready." Verse 18, it says, they all began making excuses. One said, "I've just bought a field and I must inspect it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me." Another said, "I now have a wife. So I can't come." The servant returned and told his master what they had said, and his master was furious. He was furious, and he said, "Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." After the servant did this, he reported, "There's still room for more." So his master said, "Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that the house will be full." Verse 24, "For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet." You see, understand that right now Jesus, he's at the home of a chief Pharisee, and he's having dinner with this chief Pharisee, and he told this story that we just read about this invitation to a banquet, to a dinner, right? And Jesus, you got to understand that Jesus, he had a way of telling stories to explain spiritual truths. We call them parables. And we just read it, but in verse 17, right, there's a man and he has this banquet, and in verse 17 it says that everything is ready. Everything's ready. The food's ready. The table has been set. The chairs are in place. We swept the floors. Like it is ready. It's game time. So he sends his servants out to go and tell the guests, come on, it's time. It's time for the banquet. But here's the thing we have to understand. The invite had already gone out. The invite already went out. You got to think of it like a save the date, right? They didn't have clocks, so the actual time, it was announced day of. But this means that they had already accepted the invitation when it was given. They had already RSVP'd, right? But now it's the day of, it's time for the banquet, and something came up. Something came up. Barclay, he says, to accept the invitation beforehand and then refuse it when the day came was a grave insult. Excuses. And they're all invited to come to the greatest feast of all time. Greatest feast of all time. But they started to make excuses. Can I tell you, excuses get in the way of your ability to follow Jesus. Excuses. I just want to look at some of these excuses that were said in this story. The first was this, and it kind of goes together. There's two that kind of go together. It was first, I can't come. I just bought a field, right? I got to inspect it. I can't come, excuse me. And then the other excuse that went along with it was, I just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I got to try them out. I can't come, right? The first two excuses, it had to do with material things, right? Material things. And really, they didn't make any sense. They didn't make any sense. Who buys land and then goes to inspect it and check it out? Who does that? Lame excuse. Lame excuse. And then also, who buys 10 oxen and waits to check them out and try them out after he gets them? Who does that? Like, it makes me think of the Weingartner Klingemann show cattle. I did not realize, guys, it is a big deal to buy a cow. It is, no, seriously, it is a huge, huge deal. And I didn't know this moving to Lima. I'm a city dude. I'm trying to be country, clearly not. I wish I could be. But you just can't be country, you know? I wish, though, sometimes. But I didn't realize that it's a big deal to buy a cow. Huge deal. Me and my family, we went to one of the shows, and which, by the way, are the Weingartners or Klingemans here? They'll be here next service. I didn't realize it, but we get to this show and there's fences and there's cows on these fences, and people are like walking around them, and they're inspecting them and lifting their leg. They're like checking out the cow. There was a brochure that said all the details about the cow. Like it's a big deal to buy a cow. So when I look back at this story, and this guy, he bought 10 oxen, and I can't come because I need to try them out. Baloney! He knew all the details before he bought them, right? Terrible excuse. Terrible excuse. See, the purchase of the land wasn't bad. The purchase of the oxen wasn't bad, but putting material wealth and possessions ahead of God, that's bad. Making them the priority, that's a bad excuse. Someone say excuses. Excuses become the boss of you. Did you hear me? Excuses become the boss of you. Excuses tell you what you can and can't do. Excuses. I can't come, I just bought land. I can't come, I just bought some oxen. And this next excuse, I can't come, I now have a wife. Number one, he threw his wife under the bus. That's not good. You don't do that, right? Every man in the house is like, no. But this guy, you got to think, oh man, that's a good excuse. He's a family man. He must be a pretty good guy. But listen, the Word of God is very, very clear about what has to be number one in your life. Matthew 10:37 says that anyone who loves their father or mother more than me, Jesus, is not worthy of me. Look at the second half of the verse. This will kick you in the mouth. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whew. That's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? Jeez. But the best thing that we can show our family is that they are not first in our lives, but Jesus is. That's the best thing that we can show our family. They're a close second for sure, right? They're a close second. I know it's hard to say, but he has to occupy that position. Jesus has got to be first. He has to be the center of your life, and then everything else flows from that. If anything else is the center, that person, or that thing is going to become Lord of your life. And then it's going to start becoming your excuse. Excuses. Benjamin Franklin, he said that he that is good for making excuses is seldom good for anything else. Whew. Sheesh. These excuse makers, they condemn themselves. The fact is, they just didn't want to go. Right? They just didn't want to come to the banquet. They didn't have a desire. The guy with the wife, I got a wife. I can't come. He made up his mind. Right? No one was going to talk him out of this. Our excuses, hear me, our excuses compete for the lordship of our lives. Excuses become our king. Excuses, they demand, they say, don't do that. They say, they demand, don't go there, don't try that. Don't admit that you're wrong. That's what excuses demand. In the book of Hebrews, the Apostle Paul, he urges believers, he says, don't use trials as an excuse to retreat from your faith. Whew. This is tough right here. What's he saying there? He's saying, if something is going on in your life and it's rough, if you're going through a tough time, don't use that as an excuse to retreat from your faith in Jesus. Don't use that as an excuse. He says, get rid of everything that will set you back. Toss aside anything that trips you up. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. See, Jesus, he's specific about sin. He's specific about sin. Sin is anything that hurts someone or yourself. Y'all are awfully quiet today. Lying to someone is a sin. Right? It hurts people. It breaks relationships. Lying to people, lying to yourself, that is a sin because it hurts you. It's a sin. Can I tell you, excuses are just fancy lies. They're lies. They're lies that you tell yourself about yourself. Hebrews 12:1, the first half, it says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Excuses get in the way of the race that you were born to run. As a Christ follower, as a Christian, the race that's marked out for you is God's plan for your life. You're not going to discover that race or even participate in it if you're making excuses. Excuses. When you make excuses, it's just all about us, right? It's all about me. All me. So we make excuses, it's all about us. And if you live for yourself, you're only going to have yourself to show for yourself. Jeez. People who make excuses rarely make a difference. Our missions team, they just got back from El Salvador. If you were on the missions team, raise your hand. Welcome, huh? Wow, we got a big crew of them. Wow. Oh my goodness. Man, I have loved hearing the testimonies, the stories of what God has done. But Pastor Lena, she was keeping us updated through text. And a few times she was updating us and we were learning that there were some team members that were getting sick or even hurt, like rolled ankles, nausea, allergic reactions. Can I tell you, this is stuff you don't want to have when you're out of the country. Allergic reactions, rashes, a burned hand, passing out, a broken foot. difficult confrontations. Listen, there could have been a whole bunch of excuses. Right? There could have been a whole bunch of excuses, but our team pushed through. They fixed their eyes on Jesus, and because of that, because they didn't let excuses take over, listen to this, with all the teams, they reached 833 people. They saw, listen to this, they saw 1,061 salvations. Wow. They prayed for 907 people with problems. They prayed for 370 healings. What would have happened if they would have made excuses? What would have happened? But they had their eyes on the prize. They fixed their eyes on Jesus. See, Paul, he tells us to stop focusing on ourselves. Stop focusing on yourself. If you're a Jesus follower, the next step is to fix your eyes on Jesus. He says, let us throw off everything that hinders us. The sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. See, when we fix our eyes on Jesus, when we follow him, eventually we're gonna start looking away from the lies that we've told ourselves. We start to turn away from the excuses, right? And Jesus, he leads us through all that nonsense. When we fix our eyes, someone say, fix your eyes. What once shut us down, the excuses, it becomes an opportunity. That's if we shut down the excuse factory, right? We got to fix our eyes on Jesus. Instead, we then begin to ask, why not me? Why not me? Why not right now? Why not forgive? See, excuses make us small. But Jesus, he invites us to live big. We're free to follow our Savior instead of saying no for reasons that are no reasons at all. Excuses. Look at this last verse in the text that we read from today. It's the host of the banquet talking. In verse 24, it says, none of those that I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet. Maybe you think you're different. Maybe you think you have a good reason for saying no to God, but is the reason worth missing your destiny for? Is the excuse worth it? See, because when God speaks to you, and he will, there's a moment of truth. It's the moment of truth. At that point, you either make a commitment or you make up an excuse. There's a choice that we have. And we have to remember who we're dealing with, right? We're not making excuses to a man that's going to be duped by them, right? We're making an excuse up to the heart-searching God, the all-knowing God. Yes, God has a plan for you, but you are the one that has to step into your destiny. Enough with the excuses. We got to stop making excuses. What is God asking you to do? Why are you hesitating? Charles Spurgeon puts it like this. He said, remember, again, what it is you're trifling with. It is your own soul the soul which can never die. You are trifling with a heaven which you will never see if you keep on with these excuses. You've got to work out your own salvation. You've got to do your own praying. You've got to do your own coming to the house of God. You can't blame it on this and that anymore. You got to do your own worshiping. You got to do your own Bible study. Your father's faith, your grandma's faith is not going to get you into heaven. And if you keep saying and offering excuses to God as why you can't live for him, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't get rid of this. I can't overcome it. I can't get free. I've tried it. I can't do it. I just give up. Enough with the excuses. Enough. Enough with justifying failure in your life. If you want to get free, you can get free. Come on, can I speak into you this morning? If you want to get free, you can get free. If you want to change, you can change. Feel empowered, you can do it. If you want to be a better person, you can be a better person. If you want joy, you can have joy. Jesus, he's inviting you right now. He's inviting you to his banquet. Don't make an excuse and say yes to the invitation.